Hello, welcome to my knitting channel. My name is Abby, and it has been a couple months since I last filmed a regular podcast episode catching you up on what I'm working on. So I have a lot to share today. I have 5 FOs and a number of whips, and there's just a lot, so I think we should get right into it. But first, I do want to take a minute to tell you what I'm wearing. This is the Velocore by Andrea. This is a pretty old project for me. I think I made it about 5 years ago. I've probably worn it like 3 times during that time. The weather is kind of perfect right now for wearing it. It's in like the low 60s because this is made fully of wool and it's pretty tight fitting, and it's pretty heavy, so it's not the most comfortable t-shirt. I made it mostly out of the Fiber Co. Cumbria fingering, I believe, which is a wool and mohair blend. And so it's a little scratchy, it's a little uncomfortable, but I wanted to wear it in this episode because I do still like it. Like, I think it's cute. It's just not the most pleasant thing to wear. So I'll start with the sweater that you have seen the most of. This is my Paul Klee sweater by Midori Hirose. And last time I showed it off, I was almost done with the second sleeve. So I finished that up pretty quickly, and now it's done. It was really nice to get this off the needles because it is a fingering weight sweater, and it took me quite a while. I think 3 to maybe 3.5 months of working on this and being focused on it. So it's definitely, it was kind of a beast of a project. It is more of like a full length sweater versus a crop sweater. So it took me quite a while. I talked extensively about this in my last episode, including some of the modifications I made, one of which was to the back neck shaping. The yoke is knit out of a coast to coast sock set. It's like a cashmere merino blend. And then the main color is from Ritual Dyes, their maiden line, and their colorway Loam, which I think is such a beautiful colorway and really complemented all of these kind of earthy colors in the yoke. I really like yoke sweaters when they also have this raglan shaping on the second half of the yoke. I think that just makes them fit really well, and this one especially is really nice to wear because, one, it's fingering weight, so it's pretty lightweight, and then it is also superwash, which I have not worked with very much. I can't say that I love it or prefer it in any way, but it is very soft, so that is something nice about it. Overall, I'm really happy with it, and especially happy that it's now off the needles. Moving on to a sweater that I had started in my last episode. This is a crochet sweater, and it is fully finished. So last time I talked about the granny squares that I was making, and I showed those off. I have now fully assembled it and knit all of the trims, like the cuff and the button band and the bottom hem. So this is such a fun sweater. I'm calling it my retro granny square cardigan because the colors were inspired by one of those like vintage crochet blankets that's like incredibly colorful, but then it's like trimmed out in black. So that's exactly what I tried to recreate. I posted a vlog 2 videos ago where I talked a lot about the making of this sweater. It certainly was a bit of a journey. It was pretty challenging. The granny squares were a lot of fun to make, and I really got into a groove with them. I was having a lot of fun just playing with all the different colors. I used Knit Picks palette, and I think I had maybe 10 different colors. And so it was a lot of fun to just kind of randomly pick colors that I thought looked nice together. And none of the squares are repeats, so they're all fully unique. This is the Ariana pattern by Amy Christoffers for Barocco, And it's a free pattern. There are only 2 sizes. The size range is I think 40 to like maybe 60 inches, somewhere in there. So it's pretty limited in sizing. Because it is so like chunky and made up of squares, it's not really intended to like be a perfect fit by any means. And again, if you're like not in that size range, then like it's probably not going to fit you very well. But I was surprised by how much I actually like the fit of this cardigan. Right after I had fully assembled all of the squares, but before I had put the like knitted trimmings on, I tried it on and I thought it was a total flop. Like, I legitimately thought I had spent all this time working on this sweater and it was just going to be a total failure. I did talk about that in the vlog, so I will link that below as well. It looked so ill-fitting and I really just hated it. I thought it was awful. But I decided to trust the process and I continued forward, and once I put the like button band on and the hem, even like the cuffs made a huge difference in the way that the sleeves fit. Like before they were really short and they were pretty wide. I mean, it's a pretty voluminous sleeve. But once I got the knitted cuff on, like it really transformed the way that they fit. And same with the button band and the hem, like it just made a huge difference. So if you are making this sweater and, you know, halfway through you're like, what have I made? At least for me, it did work out. One thing that I did struggle with, well, okay, there were a couple things I struggled with this pattern. It's not one that I would recommend, really. It is free, so that's nice. You can take a look at it beforehand and just like, you know, kind of know what you're in for. But a couple things. So one, the gauge was really confusing to me. I don't really crochet a lot of garments, so I can chalk some of that up to inexperience, but I ended up making this out of a fingering weight yarn, and the pattern calls for worsted weight. So I intended to double up this palette, this Knit Picks palette, to create a worsted weight yarn, and I made a few squares, checked the gauge, and it was just incredibly off. So I ended up knitting or crocheting this with the fingering weight yarn, with the same hook that the pattern calls for. So it's a little, like the gauge itself is a little bit loose, but I was actually spot on with the just single strand of fingering weight. And then for all of the knitted parts, I doubled that up and used, again, the same needle that the pattern called for. And that helped create like this same density of fabric between the knit parts and the crochet parts, just because crochet uses a lot more yarn. It's just a denser fabric. So yeah, that worked out for me. The other challenge I had with this pattern was the assembling instructions. And I think like everyone who's made this pattern will talk about that because it is confusing. There's a schematic that shows you how all of the squares need to be assembled, and that really is the MVP of the pattern. If I were to make this again, which I might someday, maybe with a different style of granny square, and maybe something a little less like art student, but if I were to make this again, I would like totally avoid the instructions and probably just look at the schematic, because I think the written instructions are just more confusing than they're worth. Maybe if you've never done the like join as you go granny squares before, it might be helpful to read the instructions until probably I think like round 5 or like row 5. Once you hit where the sleeves are, that's where it really got confusing for me. And I ended up laying out my sweater and numbering all of my squares excuse me, on my sweater to align with the schematic in the pattern, which really helped me understand which square was which, because the schematic is shown as if you are looking at someone else wearing the garment. It's not shown as if you are wearing the garment, which does make sense, but I think I am just so used to knitting patterns explaining instructions based on you wearing the garment. So it'll say like right shoulder, and it's your actual right shoulder as if you're wearing it. It was a little confusing, but I got there in the end and I'm surprisingly happy with it. You know, I mentioned I might make another one. I'm probably gonna give it some time so that I can mentally recover from making this one, but I can see myself making another one someday. Next up, we have another sweater. I have truly been on a roll with my sweater knitting lately. So this is one that's gonna be really hard to see because it is completely black. But I filmed an entire project vlog about this sweater. It's the last video that I posted if you missed it. So you're definitely gonna be able to see a lot more detail in that video. Plus I talk about all of the details, everything that went into making this sweater, from doing a provisional cast on using a spare needle, to adding bust darts, to fully finishing the sweater, and just my entire process of making it. So definitely watch that video if you want to know more about this sweater. But this is the Love Note by Tee KAL Knits. I made it out of Knitting for Olive merino and soft silk mohair together. The pattern calls for a fingering weight and mohair held together, and while you don't have to hold it with a mohair, I do think that is a pretty nice part of this sweater, especially with the lace. I'm going to attempt to put this on. I'm not sure if it's gonna fit over this other sweater. Okay, it does technically fit. I don't think I would wear it like this. This is just a really like cute cropped sweater. It's got that lace detail in the yoke, but otherwise it's just very simple. I've been wanting a black Love Note for quite a few years now, and I finally just decided to make it. And yeah, filmed a full vlog on the process. I knit the full length version, which is still fairly cropped. I think it's like 10 or maybe 11 inches past the underarm. And this is a fairly like slim fitting sweater. I went down a needle size and my gauge was ever so slightly off, which I talked about in that vlog. So mine is, I think, 1.25 inches smaller than the size that I was making, which is the size small. I think that was like 41.5 inches, I believe. And my full bust is 36 inches. My upper bust is 33 inches. So I ended up getting about 4 inches of positive ease at my full bust, and I think that fit worked out really well. I also added bust darts, as I mentioned, just simple horizontal bust darts. And again, I talked about that in the vlog and did sort of like a little tutorial. I think I said it wasn't going to be like a full tutorial, but if you are trying to figure out how to do it, it'll probably help you figure that out. But yeah, I am really happy with this one. I lengthened the sleeves by 4 inches, which is like a little bit surprising given that they're still pretty short. I think this is about where the sleeves hit in the pattern. My arms are pretty long, so that's one factor, and then the other factor is that it is just like maybe a little bit tighter fitting than the pattern recommends. I can't remember exactly. I think they recommend 4 to 6 inches, and so I'm on that lower end of the range, which just means that it's gonna fit a little bit tighter in the sleeves and the armholes. But it is super comfy. I mean, I'm wearing it over like a thick sweater right now, and I am like, yeah, super comfortable. So yeah, I love it. I could definitely see myself making another one of these. It's pretty simple, and I mean, it's also fairly fast, all things considered. Knitting a sweater is never going to be fast, but compared to, you know, spending like 3 to 4 months on a sweater, like this one does go faster than that. I'm excited to have this in my wardrobe. I need to make more black sweaters. I think I only have 3 now, and that is definitely not enough because I wear black all the time. The only problem is that it is like kind of hard to see on camera, but whatever. Okay, oh, it's getting a little hot in here. The second to last finished object that I have are my hand spun socks. I also talked about these in my last episode and gave more details in that episode, so I won't spend too long talking about it, but I spun this yarn specifically to knit DK weight socks. This is fiber from Nest Fibers, and I believe it is the Tapestry colorway, which is a club colorway from, I want to say October of 2023. I don't know if you can still get it if you're a club member, but anyway, it's a really cool colorway. I saw this fiber and was instantly drawn to it, and I knew that I wanted to try to spin a self-striping yarn for socks. So that is what I attempted to do. I call this project successful. Flaws and all, I mean, I'm really happy with this as like a baby hand spinner who has only knit with my hand spun twice, like this project included. And this was my first project where I was intentionally spinning for a specific project, and I was able to make the yarn that I wanted. So this is a chain ply in order to get the self-striping. Flaws and all, I mean, I'm really happy with this as like a baby hand spinner who has only knit with my hand spun twice, like this project included. And this was my first project where I was intentionally spinning for a specific project, and I was able to make the yarn that I wanted. So this is a chain ply in order to get the self-striping effect. So these socks are toe up using the Fleegle heel. I actually just followed the Fleegle heel sock pattern. So that includes the 2x2 ribbing, the Fleegle heel with a stockinette heel flap, and then just 2x2 ribbing up the leg. I tried to match the stripes as best I could. You can see that for a while it does match up pretty well. And then in the leg here, it does get pretty off. That is kind of what I expected. Like I'm certainly not upset by that by any means. I'm just happy that I like spun yarn that actually worked up into a project. And this was sort of an experiment before my next big spin, which I am going to talk about at the end of this video. So I'm really excited for that because this being a success hopefully means I will be successful in my next attempt as well. Yeah, I am just really happy that these turned out, and I'm really proud of them. The last FO that I have is a hat. So this is the Traveler hat by Andrea Mowry. I just completed the Traveler Hat KAL challenge. This was my first time participating in any of Andrea Mowry's like knit along challenges. I think she does 2 a year, and they're always on US holiday weekend. So one is Memorial Day, one is Labor Day. So this was the Memorial Day weekend pattern, and I kind of last minute decided to participate. It was a lot of fun. I knit this hat in 2 days. I cast it on Thursday and I finished it Friday night, and then I blocked it yesterday, Saturday, and now it's completely finished by Sunday, today. So this is knit out of Brooklyn Tweed Shelter. It was in, sorry, there's a hair on it. It was in my stash, ready to become a hat. That's why I bought the yarn. And so when this challenge was announced, or really on Thursday, not when the challenge was announced, but the day that it started, I decided I was going to just do it, just cast this on, and it was a lot of fun. So I will try it on. It is, it's a little big. This is in the cast iron colorway. it's a little big, but it's cute. So I did get gauge, but I did not block my gauge. I did have to go down a needle size, and it was looking good. I was on gauge, all of that. And then by the time I blocked it, it did grow a little bit, which I was kind of expecting with the shelter. That's just kind of part of like a weekend challenge in my mind. Like, I was okay with it not turning out perfect because I did not take the time to block my gauge and all of that. I do kind of want to make another one though to just fit a little bit better. It's not that this one doesn't fit, it's ever so slightly a little loose, but I do like a good like chunky beanie, especially with, you know, a big coat on in the winter. I think that looks really good, so I am definitely happy with it. I did throw it in the dryer just for like a couple minutes at a time, pulling it out to make sure that it wasn't like fully felting. I think it felted just a tad, which is in my mind like perfect. I wanted it to felt just a little bit and shrink up just a bit, and it did. I honestly might throw it in for just a couple more minutes. I just put the heat on low, you know, I didn't go overboard with it. This pattern reminds me of the worm hat pattern from like 2009. Do you remember that pattern? I feel like that pattern was everywhere, and I made one at the time. I tried to find it. I looked through some of my old projects, and I must have given it away because I couldn't find it, but I did find a picture of the one that I made. I was a teenager at the time. I don't know why, but when I took the picture, I folded it in half, so it looks a little bit weird, but yeah, this was the one that I made. And this texture just reminds me of that, but this is like a much more modern silhouette. Same vibes, but in 2024. But that was kind of partially the reason why I wanted to make this hat. I just think it's a fun texture, and it really reminded me of the worm. Right, moving right along into whips. This first one is one that you have seen before, but I've made some pretty good progress on it. This is my hand-spun Musselburgh hat. This is knit out of some very early hand-spun by sort of a random fiber that I found at a yarn store while I was traveling. I don't really know what who the dyer was, but I believe this is just a 100% merino, and I spun it 2-ply fractally, and it created this really cool color pattern. I really like fractal spins with the Musselburgh hat. I think the kind of varying stripes that you get and the like marling in between is really cool. The orange and green are not really my colors, but I have really been enjoying working on this and seeing it work up, and I actually have found that I've been like really drawn to this color combination recently in a way that really surprised me, because when I first spun this, it was kind of just something I wanted to spin for practice. It wasn't something that I like really loved, but as I've worked on this, I am finding that I really like this color combination, and it has actually inspired my next whip. So a couple weeks ago, my partner and I were out running some errands, and it was also LYS day, and so we popped into one of my LYS's and came across this Zauberflower by Schopel. So it's like a Zauber ball, but it is an extra 50 grams, and then it's also like in this cake type of skein, which I don't know why. I feel like this is kind of a gimmick, but I just like really was taken by it, and I just wanted it. And my partner and I actually both saw this exact colorway, and we were both like, oh, I love that. And it's, I don't know, it's just really funny, like the orange and the green, not something that I would be typically drawn to, but I really liked it. So as soon as we saw it, My partner was instantly like, can you make me socks? And of course I said yes. So I am now making a pair of socks, and they're a little bit more complicated than just knitting vanilla socks. So I will explain what I'm doing in a moment. But first I want to show you the way that this knits up. So it starts with the green and it fades into orange. Now I don't think that the Zalber flowers are intended to be knit into socks. It is 100% wool, there's no nylon, and it's not superwash, and it's also a single ply. It is spun fairly tightly, but it's just a single ply. So I am taking a bit of a risk in making socks out of these, which I will kind of touch on briefly. But sort of the main challenge with this skein is that if I were just to start knitting either from the center pole or from the outside, and knit a full sock and then cast on my next sock, I would get a green sock and an orange sock. So originally this skein had light green in the center and it also had some light green on the outside. And so it faded from the light green to the orange and then like started to repeat again, but it did not do a full second repeat. So if I were to just knit these socks, I would be getting two completely separate socks. So I decided to do a little color management on these, and I spent some time putting together like a schematic of where the color placement would land with the least amount of cutting the yarn, because obviously like I could just, you know, knit the cuff of one sock, cut the yarn at the cuff of the other sock, and like keep alternating and keep doing that for both socks so that they would be the same. But that did not sound fun to me. So instead I envisioned how the colors would lay out if I only had to switch yarns once. So this is what I came up with, and I even like wrote out like what I would be doing like each step for each sock. So I'm knitting them completely on separate needles, but I'm working on them at the same time. So this is the first sock. He wanted black for the contrast, which I think looks really cool. So I'm knitting them toe up, heel flap and gusset. There was a free pattern on Ravelry I found, I think it's called Brenda's Basic Toe Up Socks. So they start with the light green and then they fade into orange. And I'm almost done with this section of the orange. So what I'm doing is knitting through half of the orange, and then I'm going to cut the yarn and join the orange on the next sock. And similarly, on the second sock, it starts with the light green, it fades into the dark green. I just completed the heel on this one. And so I'm working through half of the green from the center, and once I get to that halfway point, I'm then going to switch. So then the dark green is just going to start directly into the orange. And on this one, the orange is going to go directly into the dark green. So I had some fun just like kind of putting that together and figuring it out. It was a little like a puzzle trying to figure out like how do I get both orange and green in both socks. Like the striping doesn't have to match, but I just wanted all of the colors to be represented in both socks. Again, with like the least amount of cutting the yarn and reattaching and all of that. And I'm having a lot of fun with these. They take a while, but they're sort of this challenge for myself. So yeah, my boyfriend is due for a new pair of socks, and so he is like super stoked about these. They're turning out so cool. He loves hand knit socks and is incredibly appreciative of them and wears them all the time and hand washes them, and honestly probably takes better care of his socks than I do of my hand knits. But yeah, so I love making him socks. So that is my little fun sock challenge for the month. So I mentioned that this is not really sock yarn. I did a little bit of research, as in I read a couple articles and like a blog post with anecdotal experience of just people talking about, you know, their experience using non-sock yarn to knit socks. And I came to the conclusion that there were sort of three factors in 100% wool lasting as socks. So one is the amount of twist in the yarn, two is the amount of plies in the yarn, and then three is the density of which those socks are knit. So those three factors, especially combined, are maybe going to create a stronger lasting sock than like a superwash or a wool with nylon will. That's sort of what I was reading. I don't know that for sure. These obviously, you know, this yarn is single ply, but it is a pretty high twist yarn. And I am knitting this, I'm knitting these on a size 0 needles, and it is a pretty dense gauge. So that's kind of why I decided to make socks out of this yarn, but we'll see. If they don't hold up, I will, you know, I'll be fine with that. I don't mind mending them. But yeah, it's a little experiment. So once I finish them, I will report back and let you know how they hold up. I want to give a quick update on my pitch cardigan. This is a long-term project that I just kind of slowly work on as I want to. So I fully finished the back panel. It is a long cardigan, so this was quite a lot of knitting. I am knitting it out of Brooklyn Tweed Shelter. This is in the Snowbound colorway. It's a tweed yarn. I wasn't really expecting to finish it, but I kind of just like sat down and decided to work on it and finished it, blocked it, and I'll probably take a bit of a break on this sweater and just work on it whenever I want to, but I'm not sure how much I'll work on it over the summer, but that was really exciting to get that done. My last WIP is in my new Big Bud Press tote, which is really cute. This is the Sunshine Tee by Andrea Gaughan. Andrea is hosting a KAL for this tee, and when I saw it, I just kind of immediately decided to cast on. So here's where I'm at. It's just a really cute stockinette tee with set-in sleeves, and the pattern also includes bust darts, 2 different sizes of bust darts. This is a great pattern. I am loving it. It's written so well and includes so much information, but it's all very succinct. And here's where I'm at. I am probably about halfway through the body. So the front looks longer because I did add those bust darts, but here's the back. So that's a better representation of where I'm actually at. And yeah, so I'm about halfway through. I'm making the full-length version, or somewhere about there. There's also a cropped version. And I did already knit the first sleeve, as you can tell. It is just a short row set-in sleeve, so you pick up the stitches and work from the top down. And then all of the hems are this really cool folded hem. So you work a little bit of extra fabric and then you sew it down on the inside, just like that. So that was a lot of fun to do. Andrea has a video tutorial on how to do that. So it's quite easy to figure all of that out. And yeah, I'm loving this lime green. Like I can't get over the lime green apparently. This yarn is Sandnes Garn 10 Lena, and it is in the colorway Sunny Lime, which felt appropriate for knitting a sunshine tee. So I'm just at the stage now where I'm knitting around and around. You start at the back shoulders and you knit flat, you knit a panel, and then you continue working the back through the armhole. So you do all these increases to shape the armhole, and then you work the front panel, and then you join the two in the round, and then you can work the bust darts if you want to. You can also just leave them out. And then, yeah, I just decided to work one of the sleeves because I think short row sleeves are super fun. So I'm excited to work the second one once I finish the body and then the hem. And then for the neckband, you just work that same like folded over double hem. So all of the hems match. And yeah, I'm just having a lot of fun with this. I've tried it on, it fits really well. This yarn is actually really nice. It is a cotton, linen, and polyamide, I think. Cotton, linen, and viscose. So it's not too hard on my hands, and it's pretty soft. And I think that blend is pretty nice. It's easier on the hands than like 100% linen or even 100% cotton. And I'm just having a lot of fun participating in the KAL and working on it alongside everyone else who's working on it. I think the KAL ends at the end of June, so if you are interested in making this sweater and joining the KAL, like, I think you still have time. This knits out pretty quickly, and it's such a good pattern. I really can't say good enough things about it. Sorry about the change in camera. My camera battery died, but I've got one more thing to show you, so I'm filming on my phone. So I want to talk to you about my combo spin, because after many months of planning it and choosing my fiber and waiting for my fiber to get here, I have finally started it and I am super excited. So this combo spin is for the DRK Spin It to Knit It KAL challenge for the Traveler series of patterns. So I am spinning yarn to make the Traveler hoodie. So here's what I'm doing. I have 3 braids of this colorway. This is from the Indie Dyer Blue Savannah. I found the first braid at a wool festival in Sun Valley, Idaho. And I really liked the colors, and so I contacted her many months later and asked if she could dye up 2 more braids of this colorway, and she did. It took a while, but I finally got the other 2 braids, so I have 3 of this colorway. And then I'm combining that with this wee Chickadee fiber that I purchased from La Mercerie, which is a yarn store in Seattle. I got 3 braids of this colorway. This is called Forever Ago, and this one I believe is called Fall Leaves. So I thought that these colors like fairly complemented each other. I have read a lot on combo spins and the best way to combine fiber. And I just keep hearing over and over that as long as you have some colors that kind of match, or even just one color from each braid that matches, then you're probably going to be fairly successful at making a yarn that looks good. So that's what I'm going off of. I've got browns and these like orangey golds in both. And then also purple. Let's see, let me find. Yeah, so like here's some of the purple, and then this one has a lot of purple in it. And yeah, these like browns go fairly well with this braid. Obviously this one has a lot of pink in it. This one doesn't have any pink. Yeah, so that's kind of what I was going off of. It was a little bit hard to tell. Like, I bought this colorway in person, but this one I was buying online, and it was a little bit hard to tell exactly what colors I was getting. I actually thought that the purple was more of a dark brown. So when it arrived and I saw how much purple was in this colorway, I was a little bit nervous, and wasn't exactly sure if it was going to work out, but I think it is working out because I have spun a couple different samples. Oh, I should say before I move on, I also have one additional braid that I am still undecided on. This is a sort of unidentified braid that I got from a random OIS, and I do kind of tend to do that where I just like find random things and pick them up and just add them. So unfortunately I can't say like what fiber this is. Well, it's merino, but I don't know who the dyer is. But this is a variegated braid of brown and black and then this teal. And I can't decide if the teal matches or if that's going to clash. So I'm still deciding on this one and still kind of waiting to see if I need the extra fiber, because I did buy some extra just to make sure that I have enough. So if I need to, I can incorporate this one. And I've also thought about maybe just adding the brown and the black from this and taking out the teal when I spin it. So yeah, that's to be decided on. But I have started, like I said, I started sampling, and this is my first swatch from that first sample. So I think it's really working out. All the colors together are pretty cool, and I'm really excited about it. So this one has a bit of that pink, purple, a lot of browns, and sort of dark oranges in this swatch. But I knew kind of right away that gauge-wise, this was totally off. I spun the first sample much closer to a worsted than a sport. I am spinning this 2-ply, and I haven't fully decided on my ply strategy, but mostly what I'm doing is splitting each of the braids, stripping them into 4, and then spinning each little nest end to end in succession. And then once I have a full bobbin of that braid, I am going to ply it with the other colorway. So that's my plan as of now. But yeah, I knew right away that this was not the right gauge, but I wanted to see the colors knit up. So that's the first swatch. Here's my second swatch, knit with my second sample that I spun. And this swatch is pretty intense because I was knitting this to gauge, and I wanted to knit it in the round because that is what the pattern calls for. So yeah, here is how this one turned out. So this has got more of the gold and less pink. I don't think there's really any pink, but you can definitely see the purples, which I think mixed pretty well together. So I'm really liking the way this combo spin is working out. I think it's going to be a success. And I was also realizing that the colorway is turning out to be pretty similar to the Spin Cycle colorway Rusted Rainbow, which I do have a skein of. I recently purchased this off of a D-stash, so it's funny that this just kind of like worked out this way. So the fact that it's similar to a Spin Cycle colorway like has me feeling a lot more confident about moving forward with this combo spin. I think it's gonna work out. I hope it's gonna work out. And I'm just having so much fun spinning. So yeah, I was working on this swatch. It's obviously a huge swatch because I wanted to get the full, like all of the colors in my swatch. And I'm probably going to bind this off because I just have the like dark purple left. But if you can tell from this swatch, it definitely starts out a little bit wider and it starts to narrow, which matches my spinning pattern. I have a tendency to start spinning thicker, and then as I continue spinning, I get thinner and thinner. Just a little bit, but you know, it obviously affected my gauge in this swatch. So I'm going to try to be cognizant about that and be pretty careful about how I'm spinning and also how I'm plying to make sure that I can ply my thicker singles with my thinner singles, And really I'm just working on being more consistent, spinning my singles so that I'm not, getting thicker singles, but I am still pretty new to spinning. I have definitely been practicing spinning a more consistent single. So this is my first full bobbin complete. This is the rest of the braid after sampling. These braids are 5 ounces each. The others are 4 ounces. Yeah, so I finished the rest of that braid. This braid was dyed differently. There are longer color repeats than the other braids. So I think that's just gonna be part of the yarn, but I am planning on plying it with the wee Chickadee braid, and I've already started on that bobbin. So I'm just working my way through this spin, having a ton of fun, and I started to brainstorm the contrast color that I wanted to use for the tassel of the hoodie. Is it called a tassel? The string that goes through the hood. I knew that I wanted to knit that in a contrast color, but I haven't fully decided on what color that's going to be. So I decided to buy some 2-ounce samples so that I could kind of try them out and figure it out as I go. So I bought these from Fat Cat Knits on Etsy. They are a great shop for buying like small quantities of tonals. So I picked up 3 different colors. The first is this like bright grass green. And then I also picked up this darker green, which in person is they're a little bit more similar than I thought that they would be. Anyway, 2 different green options that I can decide from, or what I am really hoping works out is this periwinkle blue. So this is the one I'm most drawn to and I think will be the coolest in contrast to this. So I think I'll have to spin it up and just see what it looks like. It might be too bright, it might be too much of a contrast, but this is the vision. And so we'll just have to see. Otherwise, I will go with a green, which I think I can't really go wrong with. I mean, this green would look really good and it wouldn't be as much of a contrast, obviously. But I'm really hoping this works out because I think this combination is really cool. So that is everything that I have been working on for the past 2 months. It has been a very busy couple of months working on all my projects, and hopefully by next time I have a couple more FOs. So I'll see you then.